Right, we're going to go into an expose now. And this was sent in by a member of our group. And I thought it would be interesting for greater understanding of the skullduggery involving all the usual suspects, and why the Iran is the latest boogeyman is all based on lies by again using the usual suspects. I will add some background pieces to it for further information. But there was a resolution to demand Biden investigate the October surprise and order the NSA to disclose evidence proving an SR-71 was flown from Paris to Macquarie Air Force Base on October the 19th, 1980. The legendary October surprise that has been ran every year by the Saviour program-based alt-media personalities, including Q. It's all happening in October. Which one? And it's like the recent Lions Gate date of It's All Happening. And I heard that was used in a show not too far from here. But the Lions Gate 88, Mobius, Loop and Loop is more of the Hebrew Anunnaki and New Age bullshit. Just saying. Whereas the US Navy Captain 06 Gunter Karl Russbacher and his close friend and CIA officer Heinrich Rupp piloted a Gulfstream aircraft to Paris on October the 19th, 1980, whereas Heinrich Rupp has been an OSS and CIA officer since World War II, whereas Russbacher alleges Earl Bryan, a long-time CIA operative, helped arrange the $40 million bribe paid by George Herbert Walker Bush, psychopath, to the Iranians in Paris for the October surprise, whereas Russbacher alleges that there were a total of 25 to 30 people on the flight to Paris, with George Herbert Walker Bush and some senators and congressmen to make a deal with Iran to delay the release of the American hostages until after the election. And in return for this, the US would arrange for Israel, yes, Israel, to ship weapons to Iran. Oops. Whereas CIA contract pilot and arms dealer Richard Brenecke alleges CIA boss Donald Gregg had been aboard this BAC 111 aircraft that flew to Paris, whereas there were credit card receipts proving that Brenecke was in Paris on October the 19th, 1980, whereas US government tried to fake evidence to prove Brenecke was in Seattle on October the 19th, 1980 and used that evidence to prosecute him for perjury, but Brenecke was found not guilty for saying Bush et al. Were in Paris. Whereas Donald Gregg failed a lie detector test that asked him if he was ever involved in a plot to delay the release of the hostages. Whereas Russbacher alleges he received a phone call in his Paris hotel room from General Maxwell Taylor telling Russbacher he should fly George Herbert Walker Bush back to the US in an SR-71 spy plane, whereas every SR-71 flight transmits a radio message to one of 3 NSA satellites positioned at keyhole 11, 12 or 13, the exact time, aircraft of origin and also its location, whereas there should still be records of the names of the NSA or US Air Force people who were involved in this flight and the keeping of this NSA data. Therefore, be it resolved, we demand that President Biden order a new investigation of October surprise and order the NSA to disclose evidence proving an SR-71 was flown from Paris to Macquarie Air Force Base on October 19th, 1980. Now, there is other sources for this resolution at the Vatic Project blogspot.com. All the links will be in the transcript. But Paul Wilshire wrote, "My client here is Gunther Karl Russbacher, a lifelong CIA officer and Captain 06 in the Office of Naval Intelligence, SSP, who has operated at the highest levels of both of these super-secret organizations for the past 30 and 25 years, respectively, and he was also an SR-71 spy plane pilot." Now, there's also a copy of a letter dated June 16, 1986, from Vice President then George Bush, wherein he wrote, "I would like to thank the staff of the CIA and their agents," he means officers George Cave, now Howard Telcher, John R. Siegel, and Gunther Russbacher for the courage, he said. Now, this letter was classified at the confidential level, but a memorandum from Oliver North to John Poindexter described the snag in negotiations in Tehran involving Robert Hunt and Gunther Russbacher, amongst others. Now, you can get the Russbacher docs at rumourmillnews.com. But in 1981, Jakov Nimrod, well, there's an old name, an intimate of leaders across the Israeli political spectrum, sold the Iranian Defense Ministry $136 million worth of Hawk anti-aircraft missiles, 155mm mortars, ammunition and other weapons through his Tel Aviv-based company International Desalination Equipment Limited. Yes, they're involved in all kinds of shell corporations. And on July 24, 1984, Radio Luxembourg reported that Nimrodi had met in Zurich with the Deputy Defense Minister and the top intelligence officer of Iran, and with Rifat al-Assad, who is the brother of the Syrian President Hafez al-Assad. It's all connected. Swiss government sources said that the meeting resulted in a deal to ship 40 truckloads of weapons a day from Israel to Iran via Syria and Turkey. Now, other sources that corroborate this information about the October surprise was in April 1991, Gary Sick's book, October Surprise, America's Hostages in Iran and the Election of Ronald Reagan, reports by journalists Robert Perry and David Andelman. That was back in 1992. And Pierre Salinger wrote in his memoirs, Soviet intelligence files also confirmed the meeting by Casey with Iranians in October 1980, Robert Gates and the elder Bush. Casey was the director of Plans in America, CIA. And The American Dynasty by Kevin Phillips also highlighted the October surprise at the press conference Barbara Honegger back in 1992. But in August 1991, freelance writer Danny Casolaro, among others, claimed to be almost ready to expose the alleged October surprise conspiracy. And I guess you all know what will happen next. Well, you were correct. He suddenly died a violent death in a hotel bathtub in Martinsburg, West Virginia. No surprise there, October or otherwise. And John M. Barry of Newsweek has said that Iran-Contra created fertile ground for the October surprise theory. Scott D'Amico in Conspiracies and Conspiracy Theories in American History wrote that the arms deal arrangement provided credence to those who believed Reagan was fulfilling his end of the October surprise pact with the Ayatollah Khomeini. I thought they were the enemy. You thought wrong. And in November of 1986, an issue of the New York Times, William Safire, charged the geopolitical excuse offered now that the ransom was a plan to influence post-Khomeini Iran and that it was all a feeble cover-up. And Robert McFarlane first approached the Reagan campaign in the summer of 1980 with an Iranian in tow who proposed to deliver our hostages to Mr. Reagan rather than the incumbent President Carter, and thereby swinging the US election. I guess they didn't talk about foreign interference back then, like they do now. But Safire's piece was based upon information he solicited from Lawrence Silberman in 1984 regarding a brief meeting 4 years earlier between Silberman, McFarlane, Richard V. Allen, with a Malaysian man who proposed a plan to contact someone who could influence Iran to then delay the release of the hostages in order to embarrass the Carter administration, all at the behest of Ronald Reagan, it would seem. And the Miami Herald at the time published an article by Alfonso Ciardi on April 12, 1987, that McFarlane, Silberman and Allen had met with a man claiming to represent the Iranian government and offering the release of the hostages. And Ciardi's article also quoted exiled former Iranian President Abul Hassan Banizadeh, who said he had learned that Beheshti and Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani were involved in negotiations with the Reagan campaign, he wasn't president then, to delay the release of the hostages until Reagan became president. And there you have it. That is how much your politicians value their people. And it's all about political leveraging along with the Israelis yet again. But on October the 15th to the 20th, meetings were held in Paris between emissaries of the Reagan-Bush campaign, with the CIA Casey as a key participant, and high-level Iranian and Israeli representatives. October the 21st, Iran, for reasons not explained, abruptly shifts its position in secret negotiations with the Carter administration and disclaims further interest in receiving military equipment. October the 21st through the 23rd, Israel secretly ships F-4 fighter aircraft to Iran in violation of the US arms embargo, and Iran disperses the hostages to different locations. January the 20th, 1981, hostages are formally released, which is Inauguration Day, into US state custody after spending 444 days in captivity. And the release took place just minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president. Now, the US Navy Captain 06 Gunther Karl Rusbacher became an SR-71 spy plane pilot, and he alleges that in February 1980 he returned to Langley, the CIA headquarters, and somehow went to school to become an investment broker and also a financial planner. And he, in his next move, he incorporated and operated a number of covert CIA proprieties in the United States in the late 1970s through to 1986. Now, his main headquarters was in Missouri, but his CIA proprieties had offices throughout the United States with heavy involvement in Dallas, no surprise, Bush, and Denver, where much of the HUD and savings and loan looting took place. And Rusbacher identified CIA proprieties or assets, numerous savings and loans, including Aurora Bank in the Denver area, Silverado Bank Savings and Loans, Red Hill Savings and Loans, Hill Financial, Indian Springs State Bank, and many others. And he described the flow of money from, for instance, Silverado Bank Savings and Loans to start up Hill Financial and also Red Hill Savings and Loans. And he said much of the data that he and other deep cover CIA operatives gave me is still to be analysed. Remember me stating how much the CIA is involved in everything, from hotel chains to finance groups to universities to ordinary shops like Radio Shack with CIA officers in the back to supply their agents. Well, there you have it. And they are a cancer on this country and its people. And yet no one, including the bestest military, will do anything about it or them. And therein lies the problem. Now, Rusbacher made reference to CIA contract agents he encountered, including Heinrich Rupp and Richard Brenecke, who worked with the CIA at Aurora Bank in Denver and elsewhere, and Anthony Russo, I'm sure we've mentioned that name before, at Indian Springs State Bank in Kansas City. Now, Rusbacher described the links between CIA proprieties and organised crime and how the CIA worked with the group in Denver that looted the HUD program and savings and loans of billions of dollars. And he described the corrupt practices of groups in the Denver area such as MDC Holdings, Richmond Homes, Mizell Development, and nearly 100 other subsidiaries, partnerships, and other legal entities. And describing his role in two of the savings and loans, Rusbacher stated, "I held the position of chairman of the board of Red Hill Savings and Loans and also Hill Financial." And he said, let's back up here and erase that last thing. Robert Andrew Walker held the position of the chairman of the board, but Rusbacher used the CIA-provided alias of Walker for those positions. It's all hidden, you see. And Rusbacher described the massive corruption associated with the new Denver International Airport that included bribes, land flips, and sham loans. Salim bin Laden was also involved in the October surprise, and he was involved in the secret Paris meetings between the US and Iranian emissaries, according to a French report that was highlighted on PBS back in 2001. And the New Yorker reports during the 1980s, when the Reagan administration secretly arranged for an estimated $34 million to be funneled through Saudi Arabia, no surprise, to the Contras in Nicaragua. And Osama's eldest brother, Salim bin Laden, aided in this cause. And that was also highlighted in that PBS 2001 broadcast. And so, 2001, bin Laden. Now you all know why the whole of the bin Laden family in America was allowed to fly out of the country, whilst all the people were left grounded and stranded everywhere on 9/11. Now you know why. Adnan Khashoggi, a Saudi Arabian businessman, made arrangements to pay Iran $40 million to delay the release of the hostages. Well, well, well. Yes, that Adnan Khashoggi, he is the uncle of the journalist murdered by the Saudis, who are a proxy of Israel. And Khashoggi was born in Mecca to Mohammed Khashoggi, who was King Abdul Aziz Al Saud. Al Saud are a Jewish family, should be noted, and He was their personal doctor, and Samir Ahmed, and his father was Turkish and was from a family with roots in Kayseri. He also claimed that he had a Jewish grandfather. Well, I never. Now, Khashoggi's sister was the author Samira Khashoggi, who married businessman Mohammed Al-Fayed and was the mother of Dodi Al-Fayed, who was with Princess Diana at the time of her demise. Oh, the webs they weave of interconnectedness. Now, Earl Bryan, a long-time CIA covert operative, who along with Michael Recon Esquito, who worked under Rusbacher, helped arrange the $40 million bribe that was paid by Bush to the Iranians in Paris. And between November 30th, 1985 and February 25th, 1986, the CIA agent Richard Brenecke sent memos to various officials within the United States Department of Defense, claiming that the Iranian government was willing to make a deal with the United States government to exchange their influence over terrorists and hostages held for United States weaponry. If you think that was a bribe, think again. It's all pre-arranged. It's more stage theatre. But on September the 23rd, 1988, Brenecke voluntarily testified at the sentencing hearing of Henrik Harry Rupp, who was a close friend who had been convicted of bank fraud. An agent who got exposed, and so they'll set him up for bank fraud, which they arranged. At 18 years old at the time, Rupp was a Nazi Luftwaffe Air Force pilot, and Brenecke testified that Rupp believed he was acting on behalf of the CIA in carrying out the fraud, which Brenecke said was part of a much wider CIA scheme to gain funding for covert operations by defrauding savings and loan associations. Unbelievable. And Brenecke cited Indian Springs State Bank as an example. The bank had loaned money to Global International Airways, a company that was involved in the Iran-Contra affair, and the Iranian Farhad Azimeh had been a major shareholder of that bank and also the owner of the airline. More dot connecting. A 1975 ID card Brenecke supplied to a Houston Post reporter showed Rupp as a pilot for that very airline. And Brenecke said that he and Rupp had been involved in various covert operations for the agency in the past. He said he and Rupp had also been involved in such matters since Brenecke's days at the CIA's Air America, which began in 1967. So they're involved in airlines as well. And as an example of the kind of covert operations he and Rupp had been involved in, Brenecke said that he and Rupp had been involved in some of the meetings at which the 1980 October surprise affair was arranged. And he said on the night of October 18th, 1980, Rupp had flown William Casey from Washington's National Airport to Paris's Le Bourget Airport for a series of secret meetings, and those meetings on the 19th and 20th involved negotiations between Iranian representatives and members of the Reagan-Bush campaign, not Carter. Brenecke testified he was present at the last of the three meetings on the details of the cash and weapons involved, in which Casey and Donald Gregg were also present. He also testified that George Herbert Walker Bush was present in Paris for the meetings, but a month after his deposition, he amended his statement by letter to the judge, clarifying that his knowledge of Bush's presence was not first-hand but came from Rupp. Indeed. In 2015, Brenecke died from complications due to heart disease and diabetes. Yet another seedy episode in the world of clowns, who are bereft of any humanity, running rampant with people's lives on a mass scale, all whilst exhibiting fear on a daily basis. Why fear, you may ask? Because anyone who has to control others does so out of fear, just like the Draco. Fear-laden cowards who hide in shadows, spying on people, blackmailing and subverting people is beyond disgusting, and their behaviour reprehensible, it has to be said. But the biggest irk in all of this is that people are paying for several, it seems, criminal networks and get nothing of benefit from any of it. All of it goes to the cowardly, greed-based, anti-human psychopaths whose path of darkness is not redeemable.